He served 2 tours in the war in Iraq, and he's seen a lot. And now he's got something to say. Tonight, an exclusive, candid conversation with Marine Corporal Scott Davenport. Good evening, everyone. I'm Fennell. Thanks for being here. You know, practically every night we report on some phase of the war operations in Iraq, the latest offensive, the latest casualty count, the latest political debate in our troops in Washington and how they should be bringing our troops in Iraq back home. We in the media get this information from a variety of sources, and we filter it as best we can for accuracy. But seldom do we get a first-hand account from a person who wears the uniform, who carries the gun, who gets in the fight. An eyewitness to history. Well, tonight we do. It's a soldier's story. Marine Corporal Scott Davenport is a 4-year war veteran from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. He says he enlisted because he was eager to serve his country. Corporal Davenport has a lot to say, as I said, but about the war and what he says is the reality of the war versus the perception of it. One of the things that I know has been very important for you is to get real information about what life is really like, you know, on the ground, in the theater, in the war zone. Why has that been so important to you so that people understand the true story of this war?
My personal opinion is because we are over there as a military, as America, we're over there doing a job. We're trying to, you know, get these insurgents out of Iraq, and we are winning a war, and no one seems to know about it. You know, in my experience, we went over there and, you know, we came into the Wild West and we're shooting and blowing up and, you know, things are going crazy. And at the end of 9 months after our extension, you know, we hadn't fired a shot or had a shot fired at us for over 2 months. And, you know, from when we started out at 70, 80 attacks a day in that area, we went down to less than 1, you know, a day. It was a 100% change, and, you know, we thought we'd come back home as, you know, hey, you know, look, we did our job, and this is, you know, we did, you know, accomplish the mission.
What you went over to do.
Yes, and we came back.
But yet and still, Scott, you're still there. You're still there. Your friends, your colleagues are still there as we speak. Is that, in your opinion, should you still be there? Is this war a just war for you?
For me, absolutely. I think people need help, and if we are in a position to give them help, then we need to be doing that.
Now, is that a good military answer, or is that an answer from your heart?
That's my personal opinion. And I think we need to be over there.
And let me just say for the record that we talked about this prior to this interview, and you even called, and you have permission to sit and to do this. And I was a little surprised by that. I didn't know that the Marines would grant permission for an officer like yourself to speak freely to me.
Yes, that we're not censored in any way. They want us to be careful in what we say so that we're not, you know, giving out any secret information, anything that could harm, you know, anybody that's operating right now overseas.
What's it like when you're actually walking around over there, not knowing what step could be your last step, because so many of those IEDs are around? I mean, how can you be sure of anything?
It's nerve-wracking. You don't know where, you know, you're going exactly. You kind of have a general idea of what part of the city you're in, you know, kind of, you know, where you're going. But there's trash everywhere a lot of the times, and, you know, you're not sure what to step on, what's safe, what's not. You don't know who's, you know, who in the area is a good guy, who's a bad guy, and it's...
Because everyone looks innocent, right?
Exactly.
But you don't know if anyone is.
The enemy is with, you know, the good people, the citizens, and it's very hard to tell the difference.
We've heard reports that children, you know, have been used as human shields over there, and that, you know, they themselves could be a bomb.
Absolutely. I mean, I think most of that was in other areas of the country. I don't have any experience with it, but you know, it doesn't surprise me at all. You know, the insurgents will resort to anything, you know, get us to take the bait, and, you know, get us to do what they want to do, or, you know, to blow us up, or whatever they want to do.
I know that there have been a lot of judgment calls that have been highly criticized that have happened in the heat of war.
Absolutely.
Where an action had to be taken, or an action was taken because something was going on that triggered that action, and then it's been highly scrutinized. How do you look at that when some officer or some person kills an innocent civilian and then looking back, in hindsight, it was a mistake.
That's what we call the fog of war. It's really hard to deal with, and I sympathize with those people. I really do, because it's just so hard, especially working on the information, which isn't total and complete at the time. You know, that's what you got to go on, and if you made a decision, it turns out to be wrong. You know, you get burned for it. I don't think that's fair. I really don't. But you know, people want someone to blame.
On a personal level, I can tell that you really truly carry this. You feel an integral part of this war in Iraq, not just a participant in it, but you really feel that it's important for the American people.
Absolutely. I think this is, if I put myself in their shoes and said, you know, went out and said, hey, I need help, you know, I can't do this on my own, I would want someone to come and help me. And I feel that we are doing that for the Iraqis, for the Iraqi people, for their government, and I don't want us to go in and start helping them, and then when it gets too hard and when things aren't going quite right, you know, to get pulled out of there. And then 30 years down the line, you know, Iraqis would come back and say, hey, you know, what was that? Why did you leave us when we needed it? And it's, you know, I think it's part of my responsibility now. I've been over there, I know the people, I'm a veteran now, and I feel that I can make a difference. I can go over there and I can, you know, choose the right things to do and make the good decisions. And that's what I'd like to do.
My conversation with Corporal Davenport continues after a brief break, and when we come back, we'll hear more on the nightmares of war, the unexpected, and his thoughts on the readiness of the Iraqi army. Still to come when Art Fennell Reports continues.